Hello, welcome back tuning into today's video. We're doing JMA Friday today, having a look at the weather for the coming month. But to be honest, that's not going to be the focus of today's video. We're going to very quickly shoot through the charts from the Japanese model and then go on to weather for next week, because the real weather story is the potential for some very hot weather later on next week. So I'll have a look at the charts on that once we've done the month head look at, but we will zip through these charts from the JMA model very quickly today. Now, before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages at Glasgow's. Don't have browser widgets, any articles that you're interested in, please click through. You have to go for read the article. Thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads on most of the pages. They open out in the content. When you've watched the ad, it'll close back up again. They're very short, so you won't be hanging around for indefinitely watching these. Thanks very much for getting involved, and thanks for doing that. So we're going to start off, with the 500 with our height anomaly charts for the coming month. These are broken down into week periods, as you know. So the first week period takes us through the week that we're currently in, the 26th of June through to the 3rd of July. Blue extrapolates to low pressure, and yellow, orange, red extrapolates to high pressure. So what we see for the coming weeks, I've got a ridge down to the south and the southeast. I've got this trough stalling in the Atlantic, and the upshot of that is to send the winds into the south from that sort of direction. As high pressure builds south-southeast, it pushes the winds up from south, and that sucks out the hot air out of Spain and Portugal. That's the reason we're going to get this Spanish plume through next week. That's a pretty good representation of the weather for next week. Now, interestingly, the JMA has shifted a lot this morning in terms of what it has been showing. It has been showing a very mixed picture for July, but we've had a really big turnaround taking place from the Japanese model over the past week. It could be overreacting to next week's warmer weather, but this is what it's showing for the next week. Anyway, this is for the 3rd to the 10th of July, and look at this, the ridge is still more or less in the same position, sitting just to the east and the southeast of the country, so the flow goes like that. That's a bit of an Omega block, actually, and it really is bedded in, that high pressure. If this is right, we're looking at a very hot start to July, a very hot opening period, certainly going up to the 10th. Temperatures could be really warm indeed, because that high pressure is well and truly bedded in, but it is a big change on what the JMA was showing last week. So as I say, it could be overreacting to next week's sort of hot weather, but it's interesting. It has shifted very significantly in the past week. And of course, it does call into question a little bit how reliable these longer range models are. But as I always say, long range models are highly experimental. They're just really a rough guide. They're not to be relied upon. And these shifts do take place. And then go through to the next couple of weeks, the final couple of weeks of the update. This is from the 10th to 24th of July. And a little bit difficult to decide what's going on here, but it's still really the idea, I think, that that ridge is somewhere close to the UK. So we've got a bit of yellow there sitting mainly around Germany and the Low Countries, a little bit through the Azores. As I say, it's very difficult to decide what's happening there, but I think the jet stream is still generally going a little bit to the north, and we're probably still in that pattern. It could be transitioning to something cooler and more unsettled, perhaps. Not really enough there to go on, but I do think that overall the hints are probably that the ridge is still somewhere around central Europe, so that could keep the warm weather going into the middle and second half of July, perhaps. But let's not get too carried away with that. Right, that's the JMA update done, because I want to show you the weather for next week. I've got a real push up in the temperatures being forecast by the models for next week. So these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. Now, as you know, the red line is the 30-year temperature average, and just look how the temperatures are going up through next week. That really is quite a shocking increase in temperatures through the course of next week. The dates are along the bottom of the graph. So by the time you reach to the 1st of July, this is the 1st of July just here, temperatures are already sort of going above 15 Celsius at 850 millibars in the upper atmosphere. And that's only Wednesday, so from now to Wednesday we get a huge increase in the temperatures, and the peak is actually just after that by the look of it, and we're going to around 20 Celsius at 850 HPA there around the 2nd, 3rd of July. Actually, a lot of members of the ensemble, as I think you can see from these coloured lines, going above 20 Celsius at 850 HPM. It's very rare to get 20 Celsius in the upper atmosphere, get 20 Celsius isotherm coming into the UK at the best time. To go beyond 20 Celsius, when it's been a relatively cool summer anyway, is very unusual. But it has been pointed out, I have seen this pointed out, that it's been a pretty dry summer so far, particularly for Europe, particularly. Also been fairly dry in the UK as well. Because it's been very dry across much of Western Europe, it could well be that the heat is sort of able to generate much more quickly than if it had been a wetter summer. So, yeah, that's a pretty shocking graph, anyway, ensemble from the GFS model. Those sort of temperatures, I think at very least we're going to go above 32, 90. Could go higher than that. Actually, I wouldn't rule out 35, which is around 94 or 95 Fahrenheit at the end of next week. It will be dependent on sunshine, of course. If we'd had a prolonged period of hot weather, by the way, 20 Celsius at 850 HPA would probably be enough to lift things up to 100 Fahrenheit. But because we haven't had much hot weather so far, I don't think we'll get that high with this. But it is one of the guys, with 20 Celsius ice is one of the guys we look for to lift the temperatures to 100 Fahrenheit. But as I say, because it's been a relatively cool summer so far, I don't think we'll go that high. So this is a generic chart for Tuesday, and this is when it's all kicking off, really. The high pressure builds in early next week from the Azores, and then hooks itself up towards Scandinavia. That begins to push the winds out from the south, and those southerly winds pull that hot air northwards, hot air coming out of Spain and Portugal and North Africa, pushing northwards across central western parts of Europe, and the high pressure is just in there then through to the second half of next week. Low pressure, of course, is trying to develop out in the west, because as this heat sort of pushes over the UK, it meets the cool sea surface temperature, cool sea surface temperatures out to the west in the Atlantic, and this starts to generate instability. It starts to generate low pressure, and that low pressure then begins to generate big thunderstorms, of course, within the heat, and the humidity of the temperature contrast really starts to blow things up. We go through to the end of next week, and we've got low pressure out to west, so this hints that the thunderstorm risk is probably for the west, maybe not too much at the end of next week for the east, but eventually that could start to push across. Although, as we go into next weekend, this is Saturday before, just hints perhaps that we could get a reload of the heat, actually, for a brief period, before the Atlantic definitively starts to break through. By the time we go through to day 10, Monday the 6th of July, the Atlantic is breaking through, bringing cooler and fresher air in. Of course, there has to be some uncertainty about that, because it's 10 days away, and it's a transitional period, so it may break down quicker than that. It may not break down as quick as that. Heat could keep reloading, so we'll wait and see on that. These are the upper air temperatures. Here we are for Tuesday, the last day of June, and nothing too dramatic. It is a warm day. We're within the 10 Celsius isotherm generally, so temperature will be up to around 26, perhaps 27 degrees. That's around 80 Fahrenheit. Pretty warm, but not too shocking. But look at all this heat generating down to the south across Spain and into southern parts of France. That's heading our way through the middle part of the week. So that shoots northwards as we go through to Wednesday, the 1st of July. 20 Celsius isotherm is in there across much of France. The 15 Celsius isotherm is pushing northwards into the UK. And then as we go through to the last stage of next week, here it comes. Here comes the heat. 20 Celsius isotherm is getting in across England and Wales. That, I say, could well, if it's sunny, it will depend on cloud amounts, it could well, or it certainly will lift temperatures up to 32 degrees if that comes off 90 Fahrenheit. It could go above that, depending on sunshine and cloud amounts. By the way, if you follow the isobars back, you can see that the air is originating right from the Saharan desert. So that's the reason the heat is pluming northwards across Western Europe, because the air goes right way down in towards Africa. Now, as we go into the end of next week, that heat starts to be pushed away as the Atlantic air tries to get in. So the worst of heat goes off in towards central parts of Europe at the end of next week. That could be thundery, of course. But it doesn't go that far away, actually, just over the other side of the North Sea. And this does hint, at the very least, that it could be a bit of a reload next weekend for 5th of July as the heat pushes back again from France before finally being shoved off by the time we get through to day 10, Monday the 6th of July. And I think if it does come off like this, it may not come off like this, but if it does come off like this, that would be a welcome relief, really, by the time we get through to Monday the 6th of July. That that would really be pushing that heat out of the way. It's a relatively warm airflow, it's not a cold airflow, but it's certainly feeling a lot cooler than it does at the end of next week. These are the surface temperatures up to the mid-20s already by Tuesday, the last day of June. We go up to the low 30s on Wednesday, the 1st of July. If it's at 29 or 30, you can probably increase that a bit more to 31, possibly 32. That's around 88 to 90 Fahrenheit. Beyond that, we go through to Thursday, the 2nd of July, and again, the heat is pushing northwards. Here it comes, up to 32 across much of England and Wales on Thursday, the 2nd of July. 90 Fahrenheit, you could probably increase that a bit more. Generally, the idea with these charts is that you can increase the temperatures by couple of degrees on what you see there. So if you're seeing 32, you can probably lift that to 34, if you get what I mean. And it's same in winter. If it's saying that temperatures are going to be around freezing all day, generally you can increase that to +2, +3 degrees, something like that. So it's usually it's usually too cool, undercooking the temperatures a little bit too much. The peak of the heat is on the evening, late afternoon, evening of Thursday on this particular run off of GFSY, where it's showing 34 degrees. So 35 can't be ruled out. That's 95 Fahrenheit. Look how hot it is across France, up to 100 Fahrenheit quite widely across France. And then as we go through to the end of next week, it begins to cool down a little bit. On Friday, it goes back towards 25 or 26, but we get that reload through Saturday, the 4th of July, as the heat pushes back from France again, before it's finally all swept away as we go through into Monday, the 6th of July. Each assembly of the Earth is very similar. We've got the high pressure ridging through the country early next week, so that's the trigger for kicking all of this off. Winds go into the south through into Wednesday, the 1st of July. Still in from the south with those winds on Thursday, the 2nd of July. Thundery low being generated across the northern parts of France. The 20 Celsius isotherm again is across England and Wales. Very unusual to see that in any summer, to see it after it's been relatively cool, and it's still relatively early in the summer. When you do get 20 Celsius isotherm, it tends to be later on in the summer, towards sort of end of July, early August, which tends to be the peak of the temperature. So quite unusual to see that this early in the summer. But there it is anyway. 20 Celsius isotherm is crossing England and Wales, probably lifting the temperatures at least to 90 Fahrenheit, if not higher. We go through to the end of next week, and that heat starts to be pushed out of the way to the east of the country, but it's a slow old process. But eventually the Atlantic does break through as we go to weekend of the 4th, 5th of July. The heat starts to get moved away, and the Atlantic breaks through. By the time you get through today, 10, the winds are off the Atlantic. It will be a cool and fresh feel, although you see that many parts of Europe are still well above average, so it wouldn't take much to shift winds back in to the south and bring that heat back. Finally, I just want to leave you with the NavGem model. This is not going to come off, so don't be alarmed about this, but I thought I'd just leave you with this for prosperity or posterity, really, because it's probably the most extreme summer chart you're ever going to see in the United Kingdom. It showed for 25 Celsius isotherm getting into England and Wales through the course of Thursday and into Friday. There we go. 25 Celsius is across the country. That's the kind of temperature that you'll get across North Africa. If it came off, it would lift the temperatures over 40 Celsius to 105 Fahrenheit. But it's not going to come off, so don't be worried about that. I thought I'd just put it in at the end of the video for a bit of a laugh, and you can come back and look at it, because, as I say, it is about the most extreme summer temperature chart you will ever find for the United Kingdom. It's not going to come off, but I have to emphasise that again. We will not be seeing temperatures going up to 105 Fahrenheit. Famous last words, but this model is hopeless. It is based on the old no gaps model. If you used to follow the weather years ago, no gaps was like the joke of all the models. It was right down there at the bottom of the ratings in terms of model. It's sort of been called NavGem. Now it's changed from no gaps to something else. But it's still a hopeless model, and although it's very dramatic, that chart, don't be overly alarmed. But we have got warm enough weather coming up next week anyway. If the models are right, we're going to be seeing temperatures at least going to 32, 90 Fahrenheit. Could go higher than that around Thursday or Friday. There's probably going to be a growing risk of thunderstorms as well. And of course, cloud, humidity, thunder, rain, all of these things have a knock on the temperature. So if there's a lot of thunder breaking out, it will limit the temperature potential. So if you don't like heat, if you don't like hot weather, pray for thunderstorms. Right, that's it. We're doing weekend forecast tomorrow, and I think it's going to be a very interesting one, so come back for that. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.